Welcome, Commander, to Goldfish on Games, and today we're going to be talking about a game I've been playing the remaster of quite a bit recently, and that is BattleZone 2 Combat Commander. The remaster is just known as BattleZone Combat Commander, and is the sequel to BattleZone. No, not that BattleZone, this BattleZone, which is more commonly known as BattleZone 98, with its remaster being called BattleZone 98 Redux. Publishers and developers, please stop reusing names. Come up with something new. It makes this so much harder than it needs to be. The surprisingly colourful box was a bit of a statement of intent to say this was not as dark as the previous title. The specs were modest, but it really wanted far more CPU and GPU power than was written in the recommendations. As you can see, it looked pretty good. And inside the box we got a nice handy keyboard guide, with both sides being taken up by a lot of quick use information. The manual, which gave quite a bit of cool information and background details, and a CD with a cover, which was always useful when you put it on a CD rack. The game was developed by Pandemic in 1999, and this is interesting as the original was developed by an unnamed internal Activision group. We'll be mostly looking at the remastered version by Big Boat Interactive, but I'll be cutting between the two so you get an idea of how things have changed over the years. The intro has almost Michael Bay levels of Transformers and explosions.
I've got in the field squad. Where? All Holy crap, what in the world's going on here? Come in, ISDF command. Mayday, mayday. Come in, ISDF command. We're under attack.
This intro actually also doubled as its trailer. I remember sitting and watching this many times in university computer lab before the game came out, and before I could afford to buy it. Being the era of Windows 98 and 95, you had to have an in-game profile menu if you wanted to have multiple saves. Most of the game's story was presented either between mission or in-game, but there was a few cutscenes just to set the scene between some of the major events. Between missions, it was done via these voice messages that you could listen to if you wanted to.
Major Manson, this is General Braddock. Come in. If you can hear this, Major, get your troops in order. The AAN has voted to investigate the attack on the Cerberus base, and an ISDF fleet has been dispatched immediately. Repeat, an ISDF fleet will be arriving on Pluto shortly. Please ensure all sensitive information is secure. We're checking this out like you're a scout base, Manson. So you better look like a scout base when we get there.
Well, that doesn't sound suspicious at all now, does it? The game itself follows on quite closely from BattleZone 98, in both its storytelling and in its gameplay, so we get that cross between real-time strategy and first-person shooter. They did try to mix up the missions though, so we not only have the usual build a base, destroy everything, but we've also got a combination of search and rescue, defensive as well as exploration missions. So the game is far more varied than the original, which adds quite a bit to it. Quite a few of the missions also start like this, with you coming in on a dropship. These tend to be some of the harder missions in the game, or trying to show off something more interesting, and they can be quite fun, so you're never quite sure what you're going to open up to. This mission actually has us starting on Pluto, which at this point the designers had decided was going to be this sort of black purpley looking place. And as you can see in the remastered version, they took far more cues from the New Horizons missions to really spice this up and make it look much closer to what we actually know Pluto looks like today. They also added a lot of extra lovely effects, as well as some really good looking lighting and shadows. Like its predecessor, this is a real-time strategy as well as a first-person shooter, and so we're going to have to build bases, and this is done all in the first-person view, and it's actually quite intuitive. You just point where you want stuff to be, and click the mouse, or press the button. The game is very heavily keyboard and mouse based, and while the remake will allow you to use a pad, I seriously suggest anyone playing this game use the keyboard and mouse, because you'll be using the F keys, the number keys, as well as various other keys on the keyboard. And I don't think this can be entirely recreated with a pad. Commanding units is done in the same way. You point at your unit, select the option, point where you want them to go, and they will follow your orders. The main resource in this game is biometal. Now this can either be picked up by your scavenger, by just them travelling around and picking up the small metallic looking objects on the floor, which is known as scrap. More importantly are these biometal pools. These provide you with resources over time, and also when you deploy your scavenger on them, you will increase the amount of resources that you can store. This is important because you need to have the amount you require for a unit before you can build it. To get some of the more expensive units, you will need to have acquired a good number of these pools. This helps simplify the resource system, as in the original you could very easily collect all the scrap in the map and then end up with a very nasty war of attrition with the enemy, where you hope that they would attack you so you could destroy them and then scavenge the scrap that came out of their units. Taking over a scrap pool is as simple as telling your scavenger to deploy. The scavenger will be removed from your unit list, meaning you can now build more units. This is also an incentive to taking over the pools. You get the biometal over time, but don't think that if you had 6 pumps you would get the resources 6 times faster, because it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, a pump will only run when all the previous pumps have filled their own local storage. This becomes important when you upgrade your pumps so they can produce resources faster, because they then become more important. With the biometal flowing, it's time to build some power, and it's done through the same sort of interface we've seen already. And then once you're happy with your basic building construction going on, you can just drive off in your tank and start attacking anything that you want to, including the enemy's scavenger units. And with their unit destroyed, they've dropped some biometal scraps for our scavengers to get. One of the downsides of these scavengers is that they're not particularly smart and have a very bad habit of just driving into enemy units or even enemy bases to scavenge, because they just don't know it's unsafe to do so, and you'll get a warning telling you that they've been attacked. So while sending them out to scavenge can be quite useful to gain scrap quickly, it can be very dangerous for their well-being and for your sanity. One of the great things about this game is that you can very easily customize your weapon loadout, not only in the ship that you are flying around in, but also you could update the basic setup of your vehicles before they were constructed, and then all other vehicles afterwards would be following that setup.
Building.
So you could build a powerful army with the exact specifications you wanted, which made for some great battles. And once you've built your super tank, you can just order it to come along, pick you up, and you can now fly around in it. It's such a great feature and makes you feel that you're in control. You can enter pretty much any building in the game, including the massive gun towers, and then manually control them, which is a fun little way of also being able to help defend your base if you've run out of units or if your tank is being destroyed. This extends to the radar stations, and when you enter and use these buildings you get quite a special view that is far more familiar to old-time real-time strategy fans, and that is an overhead view that you can zoom in and out of the map, highlight units, and order them to attack. And as long as you stay inside that building, you're quite safe from anyone trying to kill you. And I think now is a good time to take my units and destroy this enemy base.
Moving.
The game does have a few flaws around pathfinding, with particularly walker units getting stuck or taking really weird routes to try and move around a simple building. We've been told that some of these issues will be fixed in further updates, so I'll be interested to see if they do manage to sort that out. Because units have a firing range and then a visible range, they can be attacked by units that are outside their visible range but would in theory be inside their shootable range and will just sit there, allowing themselves to be attacked and destroyed rather than do anything about it. This can be particularly annoying with some of the faster, more nimble units will just sit there, taking a beating for no real reason. In some of the missions, the level scripting can get a little bit confused and end up failing the mission or doing weird things, but thankfully this is the exception rather than the rule, and we've been told that that also should be looked at and fixed, hopefully in a later release. The wide range of units that the game actually has allows for quite a bit of diversity in your tactics. You can either load up on a whole bunch of tanks and just send them in to attack the base, attack them from a distance with mortars, or use some of the big powerful units like the Walker and just try and storm the base directly. Also, the different sides have different weaknesses. The human side require big power plants that can power multiple buildings, but as soon as there's not enough power for all of them, they all shut down, which means that their power plants are quite critical to keep going. The alien race, on the other hand, don't have power plants, but each of the buildings have those green looking lungs, and if you take out all of those on a building, just that building stops working, which can be really useful for trying to take out some of their gun towers, as that's quicker to destroy them than the tower itself. One of the criticisms of BattleZone 98 was that everything looked a little similar, and that each of the planets looked like mostly a palette swap of each other. This is something that the team obviously took to heart, as now we've got multiple different planets, as well as some moons, with very different art styles, as well as environmental effects, to add quite a bit of depth to the look and feel of the game. The game had a very active and vibrant modding community, with new maps and scenarios coming out quite regularly. This was also aided by the fact that a number of the developers continued to release fan patches for the game to make it work on modern systems. This greatly extended the life of the game and helped ensure that there was fans around for the remaster when it came out just a few months ago, with the developer who made the fan patches also helping out Big Boat Interactive with the remaster, and that the remaster being based off the code that he was working on. The reason that so many of these maps and scenarios came out was the fact that the developers wanted to foster this community, and actually included the level editor that they used inside the game itself. All you had to do was start it with a particular command line argument. As this was the same editor they used to make the game, it was really quite powerful. They knew this could be a problem, so they actually provided a good level of documentation on how to use it, as well as some of the surrounding files that you had to work on. The editor allows you to go into quite a lot of detail, and when you want to test your map, all you've got to do is press a key combo and you're back in your cockpit, driving around in your tank. I didn't mess around with the editor too much back in the day, but I have been enjoying messing around with it now, and I used to enjoy downloading the new maps and playing them in instant action quite a bit. With Steam Workshop support built in, I'm hoping to see a lot more maps show up that will give us a lot more gameplay in the years to come. I would really love to see a third title in this franchise, and I hope that BattleZone 98 Redux and BattleZone Combat Commander both have done well enough that this might be a possibility. When I first played the demo of BattleZone 98, I was hooked, and when I finally bought the full game, that was it. This game has remained in my top 5 all-time best games ever since. So I might be slightly biased in wanting more. And with my impartiality all in tatters, all that's left for me to say is, I've been the Goldfish, and this has been Goldfish on Games.